What if I was in high school DD? A new adventure begins, let's dive in. Part 1 starts now. In the place where everything is covered in darkness there is a small ball of light floating around there. I don't know for how long has it been since I am here. I do know that I was an high school student and all the things mostly anime and manga, that I have witnessed. I remember all that very well. Just the last few minutes before coming to this dark place are all blur. Thought the ball of light. A few more weeks or so later the ball of light, or more accurately the soul of the boy, was getting rather impatient or frustrated from all that waiting because he had started to get bored there. During all the time he had reviewed all the anime and manga he had ever watched or read through his memories, and now he had nothing left to do. Just a few minutes after he had started thinking what to do, something like a portal of light appeared in front of him. Out of the portal a humanoid figure wearing a black coat and pants came out of it, but his face just appeared as a blur to him. The humanoid figure first looked around and then looked towards the soul and said, "Sorry for the delay, I was rather busy in my work that I forgot about you," he said in a very casual tone. Hearing him the soul of the man got irritated but controlled himself and asked, "Okay, first who are you and what place is this and what am I doing here?" Hearing his question the humanoid figure looked towards him and said, "Who rather a come 1A. For the answer to your questions, I am a high-level being who is supposed to manage the rebirth cycle of this dimension and this place. In your terms you can call it as void, and why you are here should now be obvious to you as you are dead." The soul took some time to digest the information and then sighed and asked, "So what will happen to me now?" Hearing his response the humanoid figure chuckled and said, "Not sad or confused after hearing about your death." The soul calmly said, "Well, what's done is done, it cannot be reversed, and it's not like that I had any family or friends who would miss me even if I die." Hearing him the humanoid figure also sighed and said, "Normally a soul that dies had to be sent to either heaven or hell depending upon their actions, or being sent back to their world in a new body without their memories to start a new life." The soul was about to ask something, but the humanoid figure stopped him and said, "But since I was very late and made you wait in the void for so long, I can give you an opportunity to live a life in a world you like, with some wishes of course, so what do you say?" Hearing his offer the soul became slightly excited and asked, "It can be any world, right? Even anime and manga world?" "Yes, it can be any world, but you cannot travel to another world, only one world, so choose carefully." The soul thought for a while, but suddenly he thought of something and asked, "How many wishes do I get?" The humanoid figure said, "You will get 5 wishes, out of which one will be about changing your appearance and one would be any one person's powers with some optimization." The soul began thinking again and after an hour or so said, "For the world I would like to go to the world of high school DD." Okay, it's done. Now tell me about your wishes." "Okay, for the wishes I would like to have 1. Super growth. 2. Skill creation. 3. Immortality. 4. Powers of Seiki Kusuo from the anime The Disastrous Life of Seiki Kusuo. 5. Appearance of Tatsuya Shiba from the anime The Regular at Magic High School." The humanoid figure thought for a while and said, "Okay, that's possible, but the immortality thing will be like you would be lived like other supernatural beings. That means you could be killed and in return you could make the lifespan of your trusted normal humans just like yourself by giving them your blood, but it would not work if either one of you does not acknowledge each other, or rather trust each other, and know your blood cannot be used to save life in dire situations or for treating injuries." The soul was silent for a while, digesting the information given to him, and then with a sigh he said, "Okay, and also can you make me an orphan, as I don't want my parents to get involved in the supernatural world, and make me of the same age of Issei Hyuodu." "Okay, all of the things are done, and as a bonus I would give you a house in Kuo and money able to last for about 10 years or so. You will reincarnate as 4-year-old, and also don't tell anything about me or your past life to anyone, even those who you trust, and I have put a seal on your brain so that no one would be able to read your brain, and of course the people would not be able to notice the seal. Now bye." "Bye, and thanks a lot for this chance." As soon as he said that, he was sucked into a portal and the soul lost his consciousness. In a room a small boy with black hair was lying down on the bed. The boy's appearance may be regarded as cute and lean. After a while the boy opened his eyes and checked his surroundings. He suddenly got some information, or rather memories, in his head. He clutched his head and gritted his teeth from pain. After a while he got up breathing heavily and was sweating as well. He stood up from the bed and started walking towards the bathroom. While walking he said, "So my name is Tatsuya Shiba as well, and I live in Kuo town. My parents died 2 months ago during a car accident, and my relatives left me alone in this house as they did not want to take me in." 57. When he reached the bathroom he firstly took a bath and then checked his body. After changing his clothes he went to the living room and started to think what he will do in future, and made a training regime for himself. 11. Suddenly he thought that he had no way of checking his physical condition and power, so he thought of using his magic creation to create an appraisal ability. Suddenly a jolt of current passed through his body. 7. He thought in his mind and said, status, and suddenly a small holographic display came in front of him. Name, Tatsuya Shiba. Age, 4. Race, High Human 39. HP, 1000 Average Human Adult around 500. MP, 1000 Average Human Adult around 100. CP, 1000 Average Human Adult around 100. STR, 50 Average Human Adult around 20 to 25. AGI, 50 Average Human Adult around 15. AND, 42 Average Human Adult around 30. INT, 50 Average Human Adult around 20 to 25. WIS, 28 Average Human Adult around 30 to 35. Look, 128. Skills: Magic Creation, Super Growth, Appraisal, Powers of Seiki Kusuo. Seeing his status, one thing was clear to him: the sad truth about his powers. He still have to study. While he was still depressed, he thought for a while but didn't understood some of the things. Firstly, why was his race high human instead of just human, and what was CP in his status, but shrugged it off. He knew why his stats were that high: it was because of the continuous growth that psychic powers cause to the body. So now the only things left to do are to make skills to control and hide my powers along with other useful skills. 18. Time skip. After hours of thinking, Tatsuya made some new magic and skills. 1. Deception to hide his energy signature. 2. Protection film to not use his petrification and psychometry by mistake. 3. Psychic control to control his psychic powers. 4. Elemental magic. 5. Space-time magic. 39. 6. Close combat. 3. 7. Creation magic. 11. 8. Barrier magic. 4. 9. Light magic. 6. 10. Dark magic. 4. 11. Healing magic. 3. 12. Detection. 13. 13. Photographic memory. 62. He nodded and felt proudly at his work, and then went to the kitchen to prepare lunch for himself, and after eating he went to his room to rest for a while. 19. When he reached his room, he found an envelope on his desk. He picked up the envelope and opened it and found a card and a letter. He opened the letter and it read, "Yo Tatsuya. Your friendly wish giver here. I hope you reach there without any problems. Anyway, here is the card. It contains around 15 million yen. I guess that should be enough for the time being, and also for practice combat. You can go in your astral form and fight many creatures there, and you might even find 1 or 2 surprises there. Anyway, that's all for now. Bye. P.S. Don't forget to keep my existence a secret." After reading the letter, Tatsuya used his space-time magic to create a dimension pocket and put both the letter and the card in it. After thinking for a while, Tatsuya decided to check the layout of the city before going to bed. He changed his clothes and also put some of his clothes in his storage and went out of the house. Time skip. After checking most of the streets near him and buying some groceries along with a phone, he returned back to his home and took out some of the groceries from it and put it all on the table before arranging it. After he was done arranging, he looked at the clock and thought that there was still some time left before dinner, so he started playing with his powers, and because of his super growth skill, his powers evolved extremely fast. While he was enjoying floating around the house, he heard his doorbell and got startled and fell down on his butt. He went towards the door without looking slightest bit startled, as his body was already very tough that the fall didn't cause him any pain, and he had already checked who was on the door through his detection and X-ray vision. When he opened the door, he found 3 people standing in front of him, 1 man in his late 20s, 1 woman around the same age as the man, and a small girl who was around his age. The significant thing was that Tatsuya knew who the girl was. The girl had light brown hair and had slightly violet eyes and looked like a tomboy. Tatsuya remembered seeing her in the anime. She was indeed Arina Shido. Tatsuya looked at the man and asked, "How may I help you?" The man looked at Tatsuya and smiled and said, "Good evening. My name is Tuji Shido, and me and my family shifted here this afternoon, so I thought of introducing ourselves to the neighbors." Seeing her father introducing himself, Arina also raised her hand and said, "Nice to meet you. My name is Arina Shido." Tatsuya nodded and said, "Nice to meet you as well. My name is Tatsuya Shiba. I hope we can get along." Tatsuya bowed a little while introducing himself. He looked towards the only person who didn't introduce herself. As if getting what he was asking, the lady bowed a little and said, "Nice to meet you. My name is Grace Shido. I am Irina's mother." Tatsuya welcomed them inside his house and made them sit in the living room. He went to the kitchen and brought iced tea and some snacks for them. When he came back, Tuji looked towards him and asked, "Tatsuya-kun, where are your parents? I want to meet them as well." Tatsuya placed the glasses and the snacks on the table and sat back on the sofa silently and looked towards him and said, "They are no more. I live alone." Suddenly the environment in the room got heavy and Tuji felt guilty for asking him about his parents. Tuji looked at him and said, "I am sorry." Tatsuya waved his hands saying that it's all right. Grace looked at him with pity and asked, "What about your other relatives? Where are they?" Tatsuya looked at her and said, "There is some problems in the family, that's why I cannot live with them." Hearing him, she stopped asking questions. The atmosphere started to get more tensed, but it was broken by the sound of a growl from Irina's stomach. Everyone looked at her, who was clutching her stomach and was blushing because of embarrassment. Seeing her like that, everyone started chuckling. Tuji got up from his seat and asked, "Why don't you have dinner with us, Tatsuya-kun? Grace's cooking is very delicious." Irina also overcame her embarrassment and said, "Yeah, Mom's cooking is very good, you should join us." She grasped Tatsuya's hands and looked at her with an expression which said, "You are joining no matter what." Seeing her expression, Tatsuya gave a defeated sigh and agreed with them. Seeing him like that, both Tuji and his wife smiled at their children and went to their home for dinner. Time skip, 1 month for comment. After that day, the Shido family often called Tatsuya for dinner and for outings. Even Tatsuya sometimes called the Shidos at his home for dinner, and they were surprised that a boy the same age as their daughter could take care of himself so well, as his house was well maintained and his cooking was delicious as well. To Tatsuya it seemed that the Shidos had asked in the neighborhood about him, and they found out how his relatives refused to take him in after his parents' death. They were angry at his relatives and often tried to adopt him as well, but he kindly refused to them, saying that he was fine with living like this. Both Irina and Tatsuya had joined the same school, and Irina was the one to force him in joining the same school, as she did not want to be in a school full of strangers. Irina often played with him or went out with him for sightseeing the town, as he was her only friend, and she didn't have any problem with it, as she was never bored when he was around her. During this time, Tatsuya has also started training in his astral form, and he had only one thought about that type of training: it's damn easy. It turned out that Seiki's powers along with his magic and super growth were too much for fighting those monsters. Though sometimes some strong monsters might appear, they too get defeated easily, just they take slightly more time. And that slightly more time here means 5 to 10 seconds. Tatsuya has also created some more skills using his skill Create, and some weapons using creation magic as well. Skills: 1. Full counter magical and physical. 2. Aincard sword style. 3. Tatsuya's guns blazing. 4. Might Guy's Daijutsu. 5. Chakra manipulation. 6. Ki manipulation. 7. Super regeneration. 8. Super magic recovery. 9. Body strengthening. 10. Unlimited blades work chant still required. 11. Negation magic. 12. Sunshine. 13. Parallel thinking. 14. Trace magic. 15. Limiter. 16. Gravity manipulation. 17. Abnormal status resistance. Weapons: 1. Noble phantasms. 2. Sacred treasures. 3. Elucidator. 4. Dark repulsor. 5. Silver Taurus pistols. 6. Imperial arms. Most of Tatsuya's skill kept on evolving even if he performed it for a short while. Most of the skills from the anime he got was because all the anime and manga are stored in his brain, and he is able to remember them because of his photographic memory and able to picture it clearly because of Seiki's skill photography, making him gaining skills because of the supergrowth. Because of all the skill and his supernatural growth rate, he is already at the level where he can defeat the ultimate class beings of this world. He had to put limiters on his body so that he accidentally does not kill anyone. Right now Tatsuya is meditating in his room, as it was the only thing in which he doesn't get bored, as its difficulty level never decreases, and he also feel calm and peaceful while he meditates. After he finished doing his meditation, he went out for his morning workout. Even though his strength always increases, he suppresses it with putting limiters on his body and then increasing the gravity on his body. He doesn't need to do it as his strength and other physical stats keeps on increasing, but it does not mean that it changes his body as well. He needs to work out to maintain his physique, as he is a voracious eater and a foodie as well. He also likes to do it as it was something that he enjoyed doing in his past as well. After completing his workout, he went inside his house, took a bath and prepared breakfast for himself. After eating and doing all the chores of the house with his chic powers, he thought that he should go and buy groceries. After changing his clothes and checking all the things in the house, he went out of the house. Just when he opened the door he faced Irina, who when saw Tatsuya got excited and hugged him. Tatsuya, who was still shocked about this, unconsciously hugged her back. Seeing both of them like this, Grace chuckled, but Tuji had a conflicted expression. He was happy about seeing his daughter like this but was getting frustrated of Tatsuya taking his daughter away. Tuji fake coughed so as to get their attention. When Tatsuya heard Tuji coughing he got back to reality and immediately separated himself from her. Irina, who was still a child, does not understood anything. He looked at them and asked, "Why are you all here this early in the morning, and how did Irina woke up early today?" Hearing him, both the parents chuckled, but Irina pouted and looked away with a hump and puffed her cheeks. Tatsuya looked at her and poked her inflated cheeks, much to the others' amusement. Irina, who got irritated, looked at him with anger and said, "Moo, don't tease me this much." Tatsuya nodded and asked, "So why are you here this early?" Hearing his question, Irina beamed with joy and said, "Since today is weekend, the school will start from the next week. We are going to the amusement park and came here to invite you." Hearing them, Tatsuya, who was about to go and buy groceries, started thinking. Seeing that Tatsuya was not agreeing with her, Irina used her final attack. She looked at Tatsuya and puppy eyes and asked, "You will come with us, right?" Seeing her make puppy eyes, Tatsuya wanted to look away but was still able to feel them. He looked at his only savior as her parents, who were chuckling on seeing him getting troubled by her. Tatsuya finally sighed in defeat and said, "Okay, I will come with you, but while returning please stop by somewhere as I need to buy some groceries." While Tatsuya was saying this, Irina had already started dragging him to their car. After the trip to the amusement park the very next day, Tatsuya and Irina went to buy the supplies they would require for the school, and here too Irina tried to make Tatsuya buy stuff which looked similar to hers, but this time Tuji took Tatsuya with him, leaving Irina with Grace, much to Irina's disappointment. Tuji even apologized for Irina's behavior and clinginess, to which Tatsuya waved his hands to assure him that it was okay. After buying their supplies they went home, as they were supposed to start school from tomorrow, and though there was a slight change in the plans which Tatsuya didn't told Irina, as she would be shocked when she would hear about it, but it was only a small problem as her parents also knew about it. In the morning Irina and Tatsuya happily went to school along with her family, though the three of them were thinking what probably would be the reaction that Irina would show when she would hear about it. When they reached the main school building, Irina took Tatsuya's hand and started to drag him while saying, "Let's go, Tatsuya." Tatsuya only sighed and pulled her slightly, making her stop. Irina had a confused look on her face, as Tatsuya had never stopped her whenever she pulled him. Tatsuya had a helpless expression on his face. He looked towards Tuji, who was looking away from them. Seeing this, Tatsuya had his veins popping out on his forehead, and then an idea popped in his head. He looked towards Irina and said, "Your dad wants to tell you something." Hearing him, all of them had different expressions. Tatsuya, who was smirking while looking at Tuji, Grace was trying hard to hold her laughter, Irina was looking at Tuji with a confused but cute expression on her face, and lastly Tuji, whose lips were twitching and was inwardly cursing Tatsuya. Tatsuya brought Irina towards her father and freed his hand from hers and said, "Bye," while walking in another direction which was different from the one Irina was leading him to. Irina looked at Tatsuya and then looked at Tuji, who was trying to look away from her. Irina, who was still staring at her father, asked, "What do you want to talk to me, and why is Tatsuya going in that direction?" Hearing her question, Tuji frowned but still built his confidence and said, "You see, Irina, though both you and Tatsuya joined the same school, there were too many children in your building. That's why some of the students were shifted to the new building, and Tatsuya is one of those students." Irina first looked at the building in front of her and then the building next to hers. Though both the buildings were nearby, it still caused quite a huge damage to Irina. Irina looked at Tuji for a while and then smiled and said, "Okay, bye." Seeing her reaction, both the parents were shocked and were looking at Irina weirdly. Irina started to move towards her school, but after taking a few steps she stopped. She turned and looked towards her parents with a smile on her face. She turned her body and started running toward Tatsuya's direction while shouting, "I am going with him." Tuji blinked for a while and then started running towards her daughter while shouting, "Wait." Irina reached the gate of Tatsuya's school, but her father had already caught her. She grabbed the school gate while her father pulled her while saying, "Irina, let go, you'll be late." To which Irina replied, "No, you let go, I am going with Tatsuya." Seeing both the father and daughter, all the nearby public was wondering what was happening there. While this was going on, both Grace and Tatsuya were pretending that they were not with them and hid within the crowd. Both of them looked at each other and nodded while shaking their hands. Tatsuya went to his class quietly without anyone noticing him, and Grace went back to the car silently. 19 Comment. Seeing that no one was going to help her, Irina reluctantly let go, and Tuji quickly picked her up so that she could not try again and took her to her class. After leaving behind the desperate father and daughter pair, Tatsuya went to his class and took the most famous the protagonist's seat as it was still empty. After taking his seat, he looked out of the window and saw Arina and Tuji still trying to win over each other. He was a little surprised when he saw Arina gave up rather easily. Soon after that, some more students started coming to the class. He looked at the seat beside him and saw a boy with blonde hair sitting there, and he looked like he was in the same situation as Tatsuya, that is, he too didn't know anybody here. Just as he was about to introduce himself to the boy, the teacher came to the class. The teacher looked around the class and nodded on seeing that everybody was present. She introduced herself to them and then asked the students to do the same. When his turn came, he stood up and said, "Tatsuya Shiba," and then sat down quietly. The teacher and the students gave him a second glance but left it at that. Tatsuya looked at the boy who was sitting beside him, stood up to introduce himself, but Tatsuya was very surprised to meet one of the characters of the show so soon. The boy who stood up looked at the teacher with an excited smile and said, "My name is Saji Genshiru, I hope that we all can be friends," and sat down. Tatsuya looked at him for a second but then looked back at the teacher. After the introduction, classes went on like normal. Tatsuya, even though thought that it was easy for him, still looked at the teacher and did not look out of the window or slept on the desk like any other protagonist. Now don't misunderstand, he was still not listening to the teacher but was meditating with his eyes open. After the bell for the break rang, Tatsuya looked at the boy sitting beside him and moved his hand forward and said, "Nice to meet you, I am Tatsuya Shiba." Saji looked towards him and smiled before shaking his hand and said, "Nice to meet you as well, I am Saji Genshiru." They both talked for a while and Tatsuya confirmed his suspicion that Saji too didn't know anybody here. They both went outside and had lunch together. There were also some boys who approached them and they too became friends with both of them, though the other boys along with Saji were slightly annoyed as many girls came to Tatsuya to talk to him and ask him to play with them. Tatsuya could only smile helplessly. While all this was happening, Tatsuya didn't notice Arina, who was secretly looking at him with a hateful gaze. After the lunch break was over, all of them went back to the class and again Tatsuya did the same thing. Though during the time they were asked to play dodgeball on the field, most of the boys thought of giving Tatsuya a lesson as he got very popular among the girls even though it was his first day at the school. Tatsuya, who heard what they were thinking through his telepathy, decided to teach them to mess up with him. On the field, the only thing that the game could be called was total annihilation. Tatsuya dodged every ball aimed towards him while ruthlessly hitting them back, though he controlled his strength to not give them serious injuries. After that game, his popularity among the girls increased further and respect and fear among the boys also increased. When the school was over, Saji and Tatsuya left the class together while talking to each other. After reaching the school gate, Saji and Tatsuya went their separate ways. Tatsuya, who spotted Arina, went towards her. When he approached her, he saw that she was talking with someone. To not disturb her, he stood there silently while waiting for them to finish their talk. When they stopped talking, he approached them and said, "Hey Arina, how was your day?" Arina, who heard someone calling her, looked towards the direction of the voice, and once she found out that it was Tatsuya, she humphed and looked away while pouting. Tatsuya went towards Arina and poked her cheeks and said, "I am sorry I didn't tell you about this, as you were very excited for school and would have been disappointed if you knew about this." Even though she heard him apologizing but was still looking away. Seeing her like that, Tatsuya sighed and said, "Okay, I will cook anything for you for dinner today, all right." Hearing this, Arina immediately forgave him and hugged him excitedly. Tatsuya also hugged her back but soon separated and asked, "So how was your day, did you make any friends?" Hearing his question, Arina smiled and said, "Yeah, the school was good, though it would be better if you would have been here too, and yes, I made friends as well." She looked towards a boy with brown hair and said, "Meet my friend Issei." Issei, who was standing there while listening to their conversation, jolted in surprise and said, "Hello, nice to meet you, I am Issei Hyuo Dushido's friend." Tatsuya, who heard his name, was not that much surprised as he knew that Arina would meet Issei around this time. He was just a bit excited to meet DHMC of the anime in real life. He moved his hand forward and said, "Tatsuya Shiba, Irina's friend, nice to meet you too." They stood there and talked for a while before going home as both Issei's and Irina's parents came. Both the families introduced themselves and both Issei's mother and father were surprised when they saw how well-mannered Tatsuya was. They initially thought that Tatsuya was Irina's brother, but Arina immediately denied it. When she realized what she had done, she got embarrassed and hid behind Tatsuya. Seeing her like that, Issei's parents, Grace and Tatsuya, were chuckling. Issei was confused and Tuji again had a conflicted expression, as even though he was amused seeing her daughter like that, but was also thinking that her daughter was going away from her. After all that, both the families said goodbye to each other and left, though Grace dragged Tuji by the ear, much to the amusement of Arina and Tatsuya. After meeting both Saji and Issei, a whole year has passed without much changes in Tatsuya's life. The major change that took place was that Tatsuya is now able to handle Satan-class beings easily and can go toe-to-toe with some lower superclass beings. Issei and Saji hadn't met yet, as even though Tatsuya mostly hangs out with Saji, Issei has already started spouting his love for breasts and his dream of being a harem king in future, because of which Tatsuya mostly tries to avoid him, and because of that Saji as well didn't meet Issei. Though to Irina, who doesn't understand what was the meaning of those things, thought that Issei was very cool. Even though Tatsuya tried to make her understand that it was bad being near him, she made fun of him and said that he was just jealous of Issei, as many people knew of him because of his antics. Irina's parents too asked Tatsuya about the Issei and were very worried about their daughter. They asked Tatsuya to help her, to which Tatsuya told them his experience about it. They could only sigh and hope that everything would be alright with their daughter. Tatsuya has also started to visit the church along with the Shittas, as Tuji wanted to bring him on church's side, as he was already very strong for his age, only the amount which he shows to them. He even told him the benefits of joining the church, but still Tatsuya declined. When Tuji had started to get rather desperate, he was beaten to the pulp by Grace to not disturb Tatsuya. Today, like any other day, Tatsuya woke up, ate his breakfast, went to school, hung out with Saji and returned home. These days Irina had started to ignore him and now spent most of her time with Issei. When Tatsuya returned home in the evening, he first took a bath and then made his dinner and ate it. He was about to go to bed, but he felt a presence in the astral plane. He quickly went to his room, lied on his bed and turned into his astral projection. When he saw the astral plane, he was quite shocked, as many creatures in the plane appeared to be stronger than the ones he had seen before. He used appraisal just to be sure and was surprised to see that was indeed the case. Even though he can still defeat these creatures with ease, he was still surprised to see that they had gotten stronger. Suddenly he felt a sudden spike in energy and he immediately came out of his thoughts. He tried to find the magical signature of the source but was unable to. He started flying towards the energy source at his full speed, and after 10 minutes he reached the destination and was shocked to see the reason for the sudden energy spike. In front of him stood a very familiar orange-colored fox with 9 tails. Seeing him, he started to think that how it was possible, as the being had said that he would not be able to travel to different world, and this world was indeed the DD world, so how it was happening. But while he was thinking, the fox had already seen him and was about to attack, but stopped when he saw that the human wasn't attacking. Tatsuya was still in deep thought, then suddenly he remembered, didn't that being said that there were a few surprises? Is it one of them? Just as he thought about it, a note came in his hands. Tatsuya read the note, which said, "Yes, it is." After he read the note, his lips twitched, but he calmed himself down. As soon as he calmed himself, the fox asked, "Hey human, where am I?" When Tatsuya heard the question, he was about to answer, but suddenly he noticed something was different. He realized that the fox in front of him wasn't the one he knew. He wasn't Kurama from Naruto, because the fox has a fucking girl's voice. Tatsuya was again shocked, and this time he was not able to calm himself. Seeing that the human in front of her was not answering, the fox growled and started to release pressure. When Tatsuya noticed the pressure increasing, he came out of his stupor and looked towards the fox and said, "Sorry, I was thinking something." "What did you say?" Seeing that the human in front of him wasn't the slightest bit affected by the pressure intrigued the fox, and she again said, "Where am I and who are you?" Tatsuya looked at the fox and said, "We are in the astral plane, and for my identity I am Tatsuya Shiba. Nice to meet you." Tatsuya did a slight bow and smiled at the fox. Seeing the human in front of him, the fox was very amused and said, "Likewise, I am Kurumi, a chakra-tailed beast." After their introduction, Kurumi and Tatsuya started interrogating. After a few hours of question and answers, they both got their conclusions. The conclusion was, they both don't know what is happening. It was clear that Kurumi was not from this world but from a world which was similar to Naruto. The difference was that the world from which Kurumi came was a gender-bended world of Naruto, but in that world the Otsutsuki clan had already destroyed them, so in order to stop them all, the tailed beasts and some powerful shinobis gave her their power to intercept their last attack. When their attacks collided, a huge explosion took place, after which she found herself in the astral plane. Even though they don't understand it, but somehow the explosion opened a portal to this dimension and she landed in that astral plane. After a moment of silence, Tatsuya asked, "So what would you do now, because as of you or now you cannot leave the astral plane?" After thinking for a while, Kurumi looked at him as if appraising him. She nodded after a while and said, "Okay Tatsuya, become my Jinchuriki." Tatsuya looked at her for a while and then blinked and shouted, "What?" Kurumi looked at him with an amused expression and said, I cannot travel to the real world from this plane, but you can, so by becoming my Jinchuriki I can leave as well, and besides." Kurumi turned into a beautiful and voluptuous woman and licked his cheek and said, "The amount of power that you are emitting is making me hot." She had a seductive smile on her face which turned into a gentle smile before saying, "And you don't harbor any ill intentions or negative feelings towards me, so I have no problem being with you for the rest of your life." Tatsuya looked at her for a while and then said, "Before you say anything else, listen, I am not a normal human. I belong to a race called High Human and is basically immortal, so do you still want to be with me?" When she heard that he was immortal she was quite happy and latched onto him and said, "Then it is even better, I can stay by your side always." Tatsuya, who heard her answer, sighed in defeat and said, "Okay, so what I have to do?" As soon as he asked this question, Kurumi grabbed his face and gave him a deep and passionate kiss and said, "Thank you, now I will be in your care, do treat me well," and she get absorbed in his body in form of an orange mist. Tatsuya came out of his stupor and said, "That felt nice, maybe I will try it again sometime." When he said that, a voice came in his mind and said, "Oh, so you liked it, huh? Ask me whenever you want," she said in a sultry voice. Tatsuya nodded and collected all of the leaked chakra before going back.